It is 1888. 25 years ago, our family came to Oil Springs. Doesn't seem that long ago that my husband and I and our 3 young daughters came here from Sarnia, traveling by train to Wyoming, and from there on an open stage with seats along both sides. Such dreadful roads. You may be wondering who I am. Greetings, my name is Elizabeth Adamson. When it came time to establish a court here in the Springs, Judge Robinson appointed my husband George to be the clerk of the 8th Division Court. No room then, so busy. Had to stay at Dusty Fletcher's hotel near the Oxford House. My daughters, our nursemaid, cook, and I had to share 2 double beds. George, my husband, had to sleep on a cot out in the hall. Almost a year before we got into our own home. When George was building it, Dr. Macklin persuaded him to add a wing on the east side for him. The doctor had an office and a bedroom there and set up a small drugstore. When he had to go out on a call, he would always say to me, "Mrs. Adamson, if so-and-so comes in, would you give him this or that?" I did, and quickly learned all about everything he had in his drugstore. I got very interested in drugs and medicines and began to study along that line. In time, a complete line of drugs and patent medicines were purchased, and Dr. Macklin and I went into a partnership. He prescribed and I filled the bottles. I studied the art and science of pharmacy, and in 1866 purchased a stock of herbs and chemicals and medicines, and operated as a tontine drugstore. Soon after, I became the province's first licensed female pharmacist. After the collapse of the oil boom here in Oil Springs, many shopkeepers and residents abandoned the village, but I stayed. Diversified my stock and began selling other items such as school books, stationery, fancy goods, groceries, perfume. Even though oil made things go in the Springs, water was more valuable. We had to buy it every morning from a man who came around. He would carry it over and dump it in your barrel. Dusty Fletcher one time put down a well right by his kitchen door, hoping to get some good clean water. All he got was oil. Had to board up the door to keep the oil from running into the house. My husband tried to put down a well back of our house, but it was dry, no water, no oil. Always enjoyed working in that drugstore. I had my favorite mortar and pestle and was always very careful measuring out the correct amount on my little drachm. We had to be careful, especially when you consider some of the things that we were selling to the people of Oil Springs. Let me tell you about some of the special remedies that I would mix up for my customers. Believe it or not, we developed a special formula for restoring hair to the scalp. If you look up here, a list of all the ingredients is shown. Add to this 1 teaspoon of salt and a pint of rainwater, and then shake well before using. Several of the men would ask if it should be rubbed on the top of the head or poured down the throat for best effects. There was always a need for something for the men to try and fight off their coughs. Here's one of my favorite remedies. If you didn't know, squill is a tubular bulb cut into slices and then dried and powdered. The wild cherry you know about, but the key ingredient was just 1 gram of cyanide of potassium. We did have to make sure that this was for adults only, and that they never took more than 1 teaspoon every 6 hours. Now, if that didn't work, you could always try the cough tincture. It involved medicines made by dissolving a drug in alcohol, starting with a tincture of lobelia, that's an Indian tobacco, and then adding digitalis and opium. To this, I would add a bit of oil of anise, just a teaspoon, and an ounce of alcohol. Obviously, this was not for the young people. Just imagine how easy it was to convince some big man with a cough to take alcohol and opium. Even though it worked, I'd always hesitate before prescribing this. Well, much as I enjoyed my time with you folks, I must be going. My time at the pharmacy is done. John Widlow has bought me out, and I'm heading back to Sarnia for my remaining years. Back up the plank road with all those oil wagons. Seems like there is one going every couple of minutes. Thank you for listening to an old woman.